Good day to you all. I'm Raja Mitra, one of the co-founders of Digital CRM. And the purpose of this Hangout on Air is to give you a very quick synopsis and a glimpse of a bigger and larger Hangout, which we have done earlier, which will also be available for your viewing after we've put in the necessary editing and annotations there. So this Hangout is essentially a synopsis to help you decide whether the other Hangout is of interest and something that you'd like to view. So what we're going to be doing here is sharing the slides for the other Hangout, and this is what we'll be sharing. So this Hangout is essentially, it's about digital business and content marketing, and it's also covers aspects like identity and reputation management and so on. So let us get on with the deck of slides in the presentation at this point in time. Okay. I hope these are visible to you. All right. All right, so here we are with the slides, and as we said, the first slide defines the broad topics of the Hangout on Air and what it is all about. We start with essentially 6 postulates, which we expand on during the course of the Hangout. But the essence of the postulates is that the internet and the World Wide Web stimulated and facilitated conversations and engagements and one-to-one interactions and trust, and therefore it diminished the importance of one-way monologues like ad campaigns and PR blitzes and so on. And therefore it was like a reversion to the marketplace or the bazaar, where people interacted with one another, ascertained the value of goods or services that they wanted depending on their needs or on the problems, and then made the transaction based on trust and confidence and so on. So these are, this is the essence of the 6 postulates, but of course we expand on this in the detailed Hangout. Then we touch on how this has led to a transition and a transformation in classical models of marketing, or the classical 4 P's of marketing: the product, place, price, and promotion, and how this has gotten into several other models, which we call the SAVE model, the solution, access, value, education model, or the 4E model, which is essentially about experience, every place, exchange, and evangelism. We expand on this again in the detailed Hangout. Then we touch on the definition and the essence of content marketing, and how it has become very important in this age of digital business and social media, and how it is essential to work out your strategy and get your mix right for things like owned, earned, paid, and social media. Again, expansions in the detailed HOA. We also then go on to touch on defining and understanding how online identity or online branding or personal reputation management or impression management, as some call it, is certain and determined today in today's online environment, and what are the parameters and factors which go on to determine. And finally, we touch upon aspects like which are becoming very important online, which is basically trust, authenticity, uh, confidence, establishment of confidence rankings and confidence levels, and how brands have been shown to have diminishing value over a period, and customer relationships or positive customer relationships or widespread customer relationships are on the ascendant. So these are the broad subtopics or the domains that we cover during the course of the detailed hangout, which we would invite you to, which we'll make available to you, and which is available and which you can see shortly. So thank you very much for listening in to this trailer or to the synopsis about the Hangout on Air pertaining to digital business, content marketing, identity networks, reputation management, overviews, and perspectives. Thank you. Have a good day. Good day to everyone. Thank you for taking the time out to listen in or to view this Hangout on Air. I'm Raja Mitra, and I'm one of the co-founders of Digital CRM, which has been hosting such hangouts for some time now. This particular hangout is about giving an overview and talking about the basics regarding digital business, content marketing, identity networks, and reputation management. So, among other things, I'm going to go into a perspective about this and a bit of a history about how it all evolved and how it all happened, and then try and take questions on this, queries and questions and so on. 6 postulates, and this is more of a perspective. This is more of a philosophy about these postulates and how they brought on these changes. So postulate number 1: with the coming of the internet, when the internet happened, a lot of monologues like traditional ad campaigns and PR blitzes, which where the established ways of marketing a product or a service, started over a period of time generating diminishing returns. Now that's because these were monologues, and the internet engineered and triggered dialogues, triggered conversations. So postulate number 2 is, therefore, with the internet, there was a so-called back to the basics movement, which meant that business became all about human interactions, about conversations, and about confidence and trust in an organization, in an individual, in a product, or in a service, being the key for transactions. So it was like the good old marketplace or the bazaar. Conversations started taking place both externally, that is, between people working in an organization, between teams in an organization, and with prospects and with external customers. And they also started happening internally within the organization, which means that people were talking to other people in various departments, across regions, across locations, across divisions. And this helped greatly to break down silos and hierarchies. And instead of hierarchical structures, over a period of time, this led to the evolution of what one would call hyperlink structures. So that was postulate number 3. Postulate number 4 is more a conclusion, which is that PR or public relations often did not relate to the public. They were hyped up, souped up, one-way communications, which were feel-good communications, which presented a picture which often was unreal and often was not fully credible and seen through by the target audience. And a lot of PR essentially happened because companies were kind of afraid of their markets, afraid about them finding out some dirt about the company, finding out about shortcomings, finding out about bad referrals, and so on. So that was what PR was supposed to paper over. But it did not work that way because there was a credibility issue with PR. Postulate number 5 is that core competence and hands-on knowledge and credibility where became the important parameters for any transaction, for any engagement, rather than mere authority. So no longer in an organization could people flaunt a particular tag or the corner cabin and say, hey, listen, I'm the VP or I'm the COO, so therefore you must respect me, you must listen to me. Those kind of hierarchical structures started breaking down. So postulate number 6 is that as a result of this, you had a global multi-channel seamless communication system which started breaking down walls and started dismantling bureaucracies and eventually led to conversations and restored the banter of the bazaar, of the marketplace. And therefore, when that banter, the value proposition was right, the trust and confidence was there, and the authenticity had been established, this led to exchanges or transactions. So this is essentially the basics of how a lot of this came about. Now, along with this came about very fundamental changes in marketing, for example. And we all know about the 4 P's of marketing, the traditional 4 P's of marketing, which have been kind of there for ages. But the four P's of marketing, that is product, price, place, and promotion, were morphing into other forms because as more and more business started getting done on digital platforms, online, those traditional 4 P's underwent changes. So they were not very applicable or not very true any longer in terms of, in the new era of the new business. So let's take a look at what some of these 4 P's changed to, transformed into with these changes. All right. So, all right. Give me a little while, and I'm trying to still get some of the slides up so that you have visual, the points ahead of you about whatever we are talking about. All right. So, now looking at the 4 P's, this is what essentially started happening there. And in a product became, see, there were multiple schools who kind of got into multiple enumerations about how the 4 P's changed. And there have been any number of them, but we are going to be trying and talking about 2 of these today, and how these happened there. All right. So I've unfortunately got a very bad connection, so it's taking ages for the slides to come up. All right. So we're going to be talking about two models. One is the SAFE model, as it is called, which is, as we will explain, the SAFE model is a lot about how, and the other is the 4E model, which was evolved by somebody, a very senior executive in a very large advertising agency, or O&M to be precise. So let's first start talking about the SAFE model. Now, the SAFE model says a product actually became a solution. So no longer, people had a need or people had a problem that they wanted taken care of. And so therefore, they were looking for a solution or to their problem or a solution to their need. And this is what product actually became. All right. Now, talking about place, in the internet world, business was getting done 24/7. It was getting done everywhere. It was getting done online. It was getting done, over, on portals. It was getting done maybe through telemarketing. So place actually became access. So we are talking about place actually becoming access. So access became important because, as long as you had access maybe to a laptop or now to a smartphone or to a tablet, to a portal, to an app, you could transact business. So place transformed into access. Price transformed into what we call an exchange value. So essentially, people had to be convinced and people had to be clear that, the value, the exchange value is what they were willing to pay for, a solution to their problems or to their need. And promotion became education because people needed to be informed. They needed to be educated. They needed to be kept aware. They needed to be talked to about what were the attributes, what are the pluses, what are the minuses, what are the functionalities, what are the referrals. So they needed a whole lot of information to be able to make the transaction or the buying decision. So that's the same model: solution, access, value, and education. There are variants of this, like, for example, there's a 4E model, fairly similar, but I'll just run through it very quickly, where the 4E model is product becomes experience. So it's a customer experience that we're talking about, an experience which is in answer to a need or a solution or a problem. So it's the experience there. And then we have, okay, so first the experience, and then of course we have the place. Place became, like we said, access. In this case, place is every place. Every place became the the de facto standard because business could be transacted anywhere and everywhere, like we said before. Price became exchange. So the price became exchange, the exchange value for the good or a product. And promotion became evangelism. So you had to be an evangelist. No longer could you just go into a monologue and promote one way or the other. You had to be an evangelist to be able to do this. So promotion became evangelism. All right. Changed. And we talked about the SAFE model and we talked about the 4E model. All right. Now let's understand the basics of content marketing. Content marketing is essentially to take a very basic definition of content marketing. It's a strategic marketing approach to create and disseminate value-added, consistent, relevant content meant to attract and hold a clearly defined target audience. Now, each of those words, I just repeat because they are important. So it's a marketing approach for creating and disseminating value-added, consistent, relevant content, which would attract and hold a clearly defined target audience. So that's in a nutshell, the all-enveloping definition of content marketing. And the objective of content marketing is, of course, to win customer confidence and drive a transaction. That's the end objective. So content is actually currency, and social actions are marketplace transactions, which lead to desired eyeballs and levels of attention. To get the strategy and the mix right for owned, earned, and paid media. Right? And I suppose most of you are familiar with the concept of what is owned media, earned media, paid media, as well as social media. So for each of these, you must get the mix and the strategy right. And also, given the tremendous volume and velocity of content, because now in the social era or in the internet era or in the era of the web, there are millions of pages. There are content is getting generated at the rate of petabytes and zettabytes and so on. So there is a tremendous amount of volume and there is a great amount of velocity. So discoverability through search engines became very important. And increasingly, unlike in the past, things like SEO, search engine optimization, and things like SERPs got redefined because the search, the discoverability moved towards what we'd call semantic search or smart search, where a lot of cross linkages, interactions, the different shades of the different shades of meaning of a word, of a sentence, and what it means in a particular context, what a word means, or what different words which have similar meanings get to contextually, given their references. All this was happening. So now, discoverability needed people to actually look at some of the attributes that we've been talking about. All right, let's get to a quick definition of what is basically online identities. And now online identities and also known as online branding, or sometimes called personal reputation management, pertains to the quantity and quality of traffic related to a person or a brand. So, one of the criteria, there are lots of criteria, as you can see in the, I'm sorry, I can't put the graphic up, but the online reputation management takes into account social media, takes into account competitor websites, takes into account press releases, discussion on forums, review sites, blogs, the whole works. And higher the ranking in as many of these estates as is possible while searching for an identity, the more established and the higher confidence do you have in that identity. Now, you also have a related discipline which is known as impression management, where people or brands, they try to control the impression for an individual or a brand or a product or a service, and enhance their online reputation by high rankings in all these estates, across all these estates. Finally, let's look at aspects like trust, confidence, and authenticity. Now, trust and authenticity are very major issues for the web, which is why some of the social media networks profess to start off as identity networks, because the profile there was supposed to be a profile which is authentic, which is verifiable, can be trusted. Okay, so that's about trust and authenticity. A buildup of trust is based on a lot of factors like contact, like perception, like assessment, connections. All right. So these are factors which go to build up trust, and we're talking about online trust and how online trust is established. There's a very important and there's a very interesting exercise by Google, which is known as Google's Knowledge Vault, which is essentially a scalable, self-learning knowledge machine, which gathers and indexes a lot of information across various estates, cross-indexing information, gathering information, and to the extent where it finally tries to establish a confidence ranking across with all these informations. So there's a confidence ranking which essentially would lead to telling you how authentic is the information. How authentic is the authenticity is described by way of a confidence ranking. So the higher the confidence ranking, the more authentic it is. Now, there's also the establishment and verification of identities, which became a very key process in all this. And I'm not going to go into the details because, again, this is based on a whole host of parameters. But the establishment and verification of identities naturally was key to building trust. And there's an interesting study which was done by the Harvard Business School, where they studied mergers and acquisitions, I think over a 10-year period, possibly from between 2003-4 to 2013-14. And they found that in the case of M&As, brand valuations were on a steadily declining curve. So brand valuations were becoming relatively less and less important, while organizations which had established sound, positive, good customer relationship, those valuations climbed significantly over this period. So clearly, people who were acquiring organizations or companies or startups were valuing customer relationships, sound customer relationships, and widespread customer relationships and positive customer relationships higher than they were valuing brands. So I think that brings me to the end of the session that I had planned. This was essentially to just give you an overview of some of the concepts here that we've been talking about. And so having said that, I think can go on. If you have any queries or discussions, I welcome Debashish, who joined us a little late. But Debashish, if you have any queries and so on, we can, or any thoughts, anything that you want to add to what has been discussed, we can get onto that, and then can take on any queries that people may have. Yeah, Debashish, can you hear me?
Can you hear?
Yeah, I can. I can. Yeah, I think there's a problem with the sound.
Yeah. Okay. Can you? I think you should be getting my voice now. No.
Yeah, I can hear you. There's a. I think the sound is a little garbled,
Yeah,
but
because my mic doesn't work. I'm using the laptop mic.
okay.
And I again had trouble getting the link. That's why I'm late. And there's something going wrong there. But
Okay.
anyway, the question I had was on the question of trust. Now, various online facilities now are in the business uh, of recording, if you will, trust, uh, or having a network that will generate trust. This, I think, is becoming more and more widespread. However, this is in a very nascent stage, so far as I can see. Perhaps perhaps you can elaborate some more on what you see coming in terms of what organizations can do to engender this kind of trust network and to get on the trust network and to establish your reputation on a trust network
Yeah.
that are coming.
Okay. Yeah. No. Good question. I think I touched upon some of that, but I'll kind of go over it again because I think you missed that portion. See, yeah, you're very right that this is in a formative stage, and it's got quite some way to go, because the way people are trying to do this is by, in terms of using kind of rankings on as many sites as possible. So you trust by your profile, by your referrals, by what people are, by some kind of a sentiment analysis about you, which can be found on the web, by your cross referrals or rankings in blogs, and maybe in corporate. But corporate, of course, we'll leave out because corporate often is not available to people. And then on top of that, all these companies are kind of see, today there's a lot of personalization, right? So they're trying to establish. I mean, and social media is one important component, because if for example, see, let's say if you are a verified person now, if you're verified as Mr. Debashish Goa, and there's a certain verification, let's say, about your background, about your, let's say, your corporate career and so on. Now those are, I mean, like real life, like in actual life, those are actually elements which go to build up trust. So there's this move for, but that is still very small. There's this move towards identity networks where over a period of time, all these credentials can be verified, and the sites, like for example a Google or a Facebook or whatever, can put out. They already have this, but they have this for very small numbers of people, where they can put out what they call a verified profile. So, which is saying that they have gone through some kind of an online verification or some other kind of verification about your basic credentials, maybe in terms of saying that you're actually Debashish Goa, all your information about say academics and career, and maybe whatever else is kind of authenticated and verified by them. And but this has to happen on a much larger scale. And I think, see, there are battles happening there, because one of the ways people are trying to do this is through personalization. And as the Googles and the Facebooks and in the Apples and Yahoos get more and more information about you by possibly scanning every bit of thing that you've done on the net. Um, you know, uh, what flights have you taken? What have you been writing in your emails? What is your communication about? What are your posts in social media? A whole lot of things, as well as do you figure in some sites, and what do those sites have to say about you? Do you figure in some other blogs, and what do those blogs have to say about you? And it's like a chain thing, because if, for example, you are a trusted, verified person, and you in turn say, listen, I know, let's say, about digital CRM, and they're good guys. So that's a referral, and you need not give that referral very explicitly, but you may have said it in some content, in some site, in some blog, in some social media post or whatever. So all that contributes towards your trust ranking, and your trust ranking goes up. So this is very much still a work in process. Like you very rightly said, it's got a long way to go. It has happened for a very small percentage of people, which is essentially celebrities and so on. I mean, if you see, for example, on social media, what they have today, be it on Twitter or Facebook or Google Plus, is that for a lot of celebrities, be they in showbiz or politics or big business or whatever, they verify all this information and so on, and they put a little tick mark. There's a little tick mark in a box against their name, which indicates that yes, this is the authentic guy. So if when you look at that, you say, all right, is this Barack Obama's, for example, account, and you say, right, this is Barack Obama's official verified account on social media. But like I said, it's still happening for a very small percentage of people. But the idea was to kind of do it across very large numbers of people, and that is still a work in process. Have I sort of answered your question?
Yes, certainly. But just as a follow-up, let me suggest that what you're talking about is, of course, more authentication. There is also the question of reputation, authentication, and I kind of think of that as something like credit rating. So I'm wondering whether the credit rating people are because when you have a credit rating, right? In some sense, that is your reputation in the financial arena or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, so you want to get a job or something, and somebody wants to look up your credentials in that field. There is really no way to do that. So when you interview a person for a job, you have to look at his resume, do all your reference checking and things like that. One assumes that in the days in future, there would be reputation rating agencies, much like credit rating agencies, that will maintain files on everyone. And I was wondering whether this has already started to happen.
Yeah, but I think I think the issue there is a lot of people already are getting very worked up about privacy issues. They're very worked up about privacy issues. In fact, a lot of people are very worked up about even personalization. Sometime back, though both of them do the same thing, sometime back, a series of attack ads against Google saying that don't use Gmail, for example, because Google scans every word and every letter that you write there. Now, of course, there's no human which scans it, but they have bots, they have algorithms which precisely do that. But what they didn't quite say is that Microsoft, in its Hotmail, and now they have transitioned to Outlook, they do exactly the same thing. So, but now as awareness about this spread, there were a lot of guys who said, "Hey, how can you do this? You're not allowed to do this." Issues came about end-to-end encryption, and saying that even with end-to-end encryption, I mean, all my data is still visible to Google. Who's doing the encryption? Google. Now, do I trust Google? Why should I trust Google with all my information? So there are a whole lot of issues, and then you have. For example, if you today, I think the net can be scanned very effectively, and from a whole lot of as people get more and more online and they start putting out more and more things online and sharing more and more things online. Building up some kind of a profile of theirs, and then thus ranking that profile based on trust and authenticity and so on. Some kind of a confidence ranking, if you will I think become a more accurate process by and by. But then you have aspects like for example, the European Union sometime back has forced Google to adopt this what they call the right to be forgotten, and they're saying that if there's some negative information about them, maybe because of some indiscretions in their younger years or whatever, or some scandal or some scandal, their contention is that that should not scar them for life. So I was seeing statistics where I think this started a little over a year back, and in fact this became a court ruling where it was forced on Google. I think Google fought for long against this, but I personally found it very funny. But there's this right to be forgotten, and then finally the issue became saying who decides which of these links. I mean, basically the contention was that the links to this information, whatever, should not be thrown up by any search. Now the issue, the funnier issue was that Google said that, look, this is applicable to Europe. Obviously, whatever is applicable to Europe cannot be applicable globally. So they had to tune things in such a way, and they have put up a filter. They have got a block list or whatever for Europe, where certain sites cannot be accessed if you're doing it sitting in Europe or somewhere in Europe. But the same site can be accessed if you're sitting in the US or if you're sitting in Asia and so on. So which is a very messy situation. Now, there are other people who are now clamoring saying that, oh, okay, if this is happening in Europe, why can't we do something similar in our country? Now, I do not know where this is leading to. This is basically like almost, I would call, there are people, for example, who are calling it a kind of censorship of the net. Because if the information is out there, I mean, I saw a statistic somewhere where now there's a battle on, the issue was saying, who decides this? Who decides what is to be blocked and what is not to be blocked? And since they couldn't come to any conclusion, now obviously you can't go back to a court every time and say, should you block this, should you not block this? The decision was left to Google. And Google formed a committee internally and so on, which takes decisions about. So these guys put up a request to Google saying, I want the following site to be blocked because it contains this kind of information about me, which I don't want people to discover or search. So Google takes a decision as to what to block, what not to block. And that in turn is leading to another controversy, because at the end of 1 year, I found that there have been roughly over 1 million requests for blocking something or the other. And only some portion of that has been acceded to by Google. The others they have rejected. And there's a furor over this. People are saying, you're not doing it the right way and so on. And I do not know whether the matter will go back to a legal thing again. So it's I'm sorry, I may be rambling a little, but I guess it's getting a very messy affair because, on the one hand, you could do all that. Now, for example, you brought up the example of credit rating. Now, somebody could say that, hey, who's going to be doing this trust ranking or confidence ranking? Now, if somebody, you say, all right, the big guys are going to be doing it. So the Microsofts and the Googles and the Apples are going to be doing it, for example, or the Amazons. Now, the issue derives saying that, all right, why should they have access to my credit information? I don't trust Google, so I'm telling all the credit agencies saying, do not, that information is with you and it should not be made available to Google. So I think there are a whole lot of issues there about which agency does the ranking, what access to information it has, whether you have one kind of trust ranking in the US, another kind of trust ranking in Europe, because there you already have filtering of sites and blocking of information and stuff like that. And for example, I do not know, but I'm just talking about a very hypothetical situation where, let's say, there's some information about some minor scam you were involved in Europe 10 years back or 15 years back, and I put up a request saying that, oh, that was a long time back, and now I'm a very respectable, reputable man, and this access to this site should be blocked. Now, based on based on the information on that site, automatically your trust rankings or your confidence trust rankings should go down. But if you put up a request saying block, and Google actually agrees to that request and says, all right, this site will not be searchable, it will not be discoverable, then does that mean that since I have blocked and filtered out that information, do your trust rankings then go up? So there are a whole lot of issues there, which I think need to. Finally, I think this whole thing is in a great state of flux, and it'll take a while before I think some clarity emerges about where this is going.
And I guess eventually,
if you look at just some raw figures, Facebook, I think I think made about $4 billion in the last financial year, somewhere around that, just based on social media advertising on Facebook, whatever, promotion, boosting, page boosting, post boosting, all that. But how effective it is, I think, the jury in some cases still seems to be out. And, people, because I mean, it's very interesting. There's one body which says that, look,